How do you explain the Holocaust to children who would have been caught up in it had they been born in a different place at a different time?
Good morning, James.
Hello.
Well, the only way I can communicate it is what my own experience has been.
Yes.
I'm the firstborn of my father, who was a survivor of Holocaust, of the Shoah, of Auschwitz. Sorry, I'm more nervous than I realise.
No, don't be. It's only me. I promise you all the time and space you need.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
And he was 15 when he arrived into the country. He was the last one on the list of the network called the Old Boys.
Yes.
I always thought it was a paradox considering he was 15. One of the ways he'd managed to survive Auschwitz, he was moved out of his home along with the rest of his town. He was from the second wealthiest family in that town, which I always wondered if that somehow gave him some incredible inner strength that he just had to survive.
Yeah.
And they were put in a brick factory for the whole town for 3 weeks, and then they were carted off to Auschwitz. When he got there, they won't give the whole story, but just to give you an idea of what I understood as a child,
Yeah.
that the last time he saw his mother, who was holding her baby and my father's younger sister around her waist, he was yanked away from her by an officer. I don't know whether he was a Nazi or SS. My father wouldn't have known that at that stage.
A soldier. That's all you need to know, isn't it? Yeah.
with you know the hooks that a sheep's hook that they used to put it around his neck.
Shepherd's crook, as it were.
That's it. Put it around his neck and yanked him away from his mother, and that was the last time he saw his mother. And
I think you were named for her, weren't you?
Say again?
I think you were named for his mother, weren't you?
I was named after my mother, whose the Hebrew name is Rivka, which means Rebecca in English. Okay. The Jewish people have a custom, and goodness knows whether it's because of, millennia of persecution or what, I've no idea, but we have a custom to give a Hebrew name. Okay. So I'm personally, in English, I'm Rebecca, daughter of Rachel.
Right.
Because my mother's Rachel. And I'm going away from the point.
No, you're not. It's my fault for interrupting you. Let me steer you towards, because I only, just as I introduced you, realised what I was doing today. That phrase that I said, how do you explain it to children who would have been rounded up if they'd been born in a... I mean, your dad was. He was.
And so what I wanted to explain was that it was very easy when you looked at my father. I was about to say before, and I think it's important, when he came to this country when he was 15, he already spoke 9 languages fluently.
Wow.
No British person can get into their mind the concept of 9 being able to
Not at that
communicate.
age. No, I agree. Why was that then? Was that just the...
He grew up. It's all geography and history.
Yes, of course.
He grew up in what was called Czechoslovakia. Where he was in Czechoslovakia, which was in Slovakia, the Hungarians took it over. So he also learned Hungary at a very young age. I presume, although my father never sort of, quote, admitted it, that they would have spoken Yiddish at home. So he spoke Czech, because that's the country he was in. The bright kids at school also learnt Russian, so he was fluent. You're talking about already three alphabets.
It's incredible, isn't it? Absolutely incredible. I suppose in that environment, it wouldn't be commonplace, but it's easier to grasp if you're literally everywhere you turn, you need to be able to, or you would benefit from being able to speak or read a different language than you would if you're clever. You're just going to absorb as much as you humanly can. And
I also believe it was completely life-saving, because it meant that he understood what was happening around him from anybody around him. And once when he was going to be, they did these screens. I mean, he was over there for a year, and he survived the death march when they were rounded up, and he was one of the 500 of the 10,000 when they walked to Buchenwald. So when he came to London, he knew the first thing he had to do was to learn English. He had all of his languages, had no connections with English at all,
right.
Although he was fluent in German, so there's some link there.
Yes, the Arabic alphabet.
Whilst he was, when he first came, he was doing night school and working, and from that tiny age, he used to live in Finchley and would walk to the East End there and back every day to save the penny or two that he might have earned. Just the kind of things that, nobody would even contemplate doing these days. And as I said, that's what I was saying. So he survived the roundup of the death march, walking from Auschwitz to Buchenwald, and it was in Buchenwald that he was liberated.
Right.
And that was the 11th of April, I believe, and he arrived in England after going through goodness knows what on the 25th of July in 1945, that same year. And I was very interested by your question, how do you explain this to children?
Because for me, it's an academic question. For your family, it's something altogether more profound.
Well, and it's interesting also from the experience of a child, because I remember vividly one breakfast morning, I was 5. We were sitting at the kitchen table, my mother and father and my little sister, and I had kept asking my father where he was from. So they'd obviously kept fobbing it off until I was as old as 5.
Okay.
And so in sort of an expression of my irritation of not having a basic question answered, I said to him, "You're not Japanese, you're not Chinese, you're not," and I listed this amount of different types of people,
yes.
And I said, "And you're none of them, so where are you from?" And then it was the first time he told me that he was Czechoslovakian, and you see, he had the numbers imprinted on his arm, and he died just a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and I so regret the fact that I didn't take a picture of his arm. I've got the number, of course.
Yes.
But
you mean the tattoo, don't you, of course, for people who aren't clear.
And you know what's even more fascinating? My father barely spoke about all of this, and that's another subject I wanted to explain in answer to your question, how do you tell your children?
Yes.
But when I eventually got him to start to speak, and I was fiercely defensive of him, so I would only ever let anybody interview him if I did the interviewing, because I knew what would trigger off vivid nightmares and cause him not to want to do the revealing of what he had gone through again.
Yes, I understand.
And I could steer a course, and because he loved to tell the interesting stories. And that's how he taught it to me. So his interesting stories were that by the time he had escaped and was allowed to leave, when he left Buchenwald, there was this trade in cigarettes.
Oh, yeah.
And he told me then, and this would have been the 1960s, he said that each cigarette was worth £1. And, a pound's still worth a lot of money now, but imagine how much more so, it was 20 shillings, it was 12 pennies for each shilling. It was a lot of money. And I thought, wow, Daddy, that's incredible. And apparently what happened, because he was so young and obviously so skinny, I think he weighed 4.5 stone or something at that stage, after all the starvation and everything, he'd wrapped the cigarettes around his calves, around his thighs, around his waist, around his arms, around his forearms, and of course it was a style then to wear those big baggy clothes, and anyway, all clothes would have been big because you're talking about emaciated skeletons. So apparently he told me, he said this tickled him. He said he was sitting, I think they were sitting on top of the train, I don't know if they were allowed in the train, and swinging his feet like you do when you're a kid. And he said, all the men around him said, "What's happened to the supply of cigarettes? Where are they? I used to make a fortune with these cigarettes, and I can't find any of them."
He closed the market, he cornered the market.
Yeah, and that's what he was like. And so what he did was that, by the time I did history A-level, kind of obviously, and I wanted to hear from him what he went through.
Yes.
And I remember he worked fiercely, he didn't keep the Sabbath, he was Arbeit macht frei, was his whole way of life. The psychology of, work will make you free, is how he conducted his life. And I remember sitting with him in his car, at the front of the car. He was a very successful businessman. He always had Rolls Royces and things like that. We were sitting in the front of the Rolls Royce, sitting in front of the car, chatting, and I was bugging him. Yeah. I was prodding, trying to find. I needed intellectual answers to my questions. And he just turned to me. He was silent, and there was one tear dropping down one eye. I was as old as that, and it was the first time I'd ever seen my father cry. And he just said, "Sweetheart, I just can't tell you the things that I went through." And from that day on, I shielded him and protected him so much. And you can communicate more of the horror in that silence and that one tear than in a vast library of books.
Yeah, of course you can, because that tear was your daddy's tear, and you knew your daddy so well that tear spoke to you in a way that a million words never could have done.
And also, I felt it, and
Yes.
and I understood it, and I could probably, and people say to me, I actually should write a book about his experiences because they've never been written down. And also, earlier on, you were saying that, who's a wonderful filmmaker who's done the recollections of many survivors? What's his name?
Don't know.
You do know. You were saying it earlier on in the program.
But never mind.
He's from the States.
Let's not get bogged down in this. Let's crack on. No, I know it'll come to one of us, but let's not spend ages trying to work it out.
I hear you. The point is that he didn't interview everybody.
No.
Because my father didn't want to be interviewed.
No, and that's the point. And you know, it's not hard to understand why, is it? But perhaps occasionally we do need reminding.
Definitely. And I wanted to tell you this.
Okay.
When he came to reveal on one occasion, one of his stories, and there's one day in the Jewish calendar when we mourn the destruction of the temples and we reflect on the horrors such as the Shoah.
You mean Spielberg?
Spielberg.
Yeah,
Thank
there we
you.
go. I
That's
told you it'd come to
well
one of us. I told you it'd come to one of us. Carry on.
Yeah. So anyway, I interviewed my father in front of this whole audience, and then at the end it was question time. And again, I shielded him because I didn't want him to have his nightmares.
Yes.
And anyway, so this young boy, 9 years old, say.
Yeah.
So he asked him a question that I had never thought of. It's amazing how children can think of things that adults don't.
Yeah, isn't it?
And he said, "How did they put the tattoo on your arm?" And the answer was so shocking, James, that, I obviously will never forget it. And he said, they held down his arm and with an ink pen, with a nib, went smash, 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 smash to put in into his arm, the tattooed number. And it's a letter A and 4 numbers. And quite large. It was 14 millimeters high.
Sure.
Can you imagine no one could. It had never even occurred to me that the pain could. That it would even have been done in that way. It's like everything in any way whatsoever was to cause pain and anguish and to kill. And this wasn't on your program, but yesterday when they were talking about it, they were talking about the amount of food that they were given. It was much less than was stated yesterday. And my dad survived through this method. They would give one small roll, but more like black flour than anything else.
Yes.
And I mean smaller the size of your hand, but once a day, and otherwise it would be black liquid. Goodness knows what was in it. And he always used to put today's bread when they got it in his back pocket. Because there would be days when they omitted to give it to people. And when people are on that level of starvation,
Good God.
that causes their death.
Do you know, I hope it's not a trite thing to say, but you can see from the seeds you've described of that child how he grew to be such a successful man. There's a brain there that is superhuman almost, isn't there? There's a calculation and a kind of survival mode that is beyond most of us. I'm so glad you were listening today. Thank you.
Jay.
No, thank you.